The Downtown Rams podcast is brought to you today by Draft. Looking for the best fantasy sports site on the planet? Sign up with Draft today. For a limited time only, our listeners will receive $3 matching their first deposit of at least $10. Use promo code DTR or visit draft.com/DTR to sign up now. Draft. Fantasy for the people. Now enjoy the show.
Caught by Brandon Cooks. Shoot your arrows. Cooper Kupp plucks it out of the air and gives the Rams the lead. Robert Wood, touchdown. LA. Goff goes crashing into the end zone. Aaron Donald almost beat the football there. Corey Littleton, have yourself a day. Picked off. Marcus Peters coming off the edge, and Ryan will be wrapped up by Clay Matthews. Everett in stride. Wow!
Franklin Myers gets his hand down there.
Leto got a hand on it. Did he pick it? He did!
Racing down the sideline is Akeem Talib. Gurley for MVP! Touchdown LA! Picked off by John Johnson. Well, Dante Fowler, who is able to get to breathe. Greg Zuerlein sends the Rams to the Super Bowl! LA will play for the Lombardi!
Welcome back, guys, to another Downtown Rams podcast. It's episode 244. I'm your host, Jake Ellenbogen. Joining me, as always, is Alexis Kraft. And we're here right before the Tampa Bay Buccaneers head to Los Angeles to play the Rams. Before we get into all that, just got a couple things to read off to you, of course. If you like what you hear, be sure to subscribe, leave a review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. We're going to be doing giveaways soon for Rams jerseys and cool things like that. So if you want to get involved in that, be sure to leave a review and rate our podcast. We'd prefer a 5-star review. And also just want to let you know that this episode is brought to you by House of Hoodies. You can check out House of Hoodies for their awesome Rams jersey hoodies. Best way to rep your team during the winter. They have other sports as well. All you have to do is go to thehouseofhoodies.com. at HO Hoodies on Twitter. And if you use the code DTR, it'll save you 20% off on your purchase. So that is that. And Alexis, we're back. We're here. We're going to, break down this whole game. And I just want to get your thoughts, right off the cuff going in this game. I know you did get a lot of opportunity to watch the Giants and Buccaneers game. And obviously you saw this team as well, as I, coming off a loss like that, how important is it in this game for the Buccaneers, to win this game against the Rams now being 1-2 and potentially, losing hold of their season?
Yeah, I think the Buccaneers are going to come out swinging. I think that they really want to win this game. Every team obviously wants to win every game they play in, but I think that the Bucs are in a unique situation because it seems to me, when you look at the Bucs depth chart, the Bucs have a pretty solid defense. And that's something that I think a lot of people forget, but they actually have a pretty solid defense. They have, if you just look at their defensive line, I mean, they've got Ndamukong Suh, who we are obviously very familiar with because he was on our team last year, Vita Vea, William Golston, and Carl Nassib. Who is more kind of, I guess, would probably fit more into the outside linebacker spot. But then they also have got Devin White and Shaquille Barrett in their linebacking core. And then they've got a pretty solid secondary as well. So I think that that's something to not underestimate or forget going into the game, is that, because I think the weak spot for the Bucs is their offense. They have a pretty lackluster offense. I mean, obviously they have Mike Evans, who's, a great receiver. But other than that, they don't really have much. And something that I think we'll get into later a little bit, but my prediction, one of them, is that the Rams defensive line is going to just have a field day with this Buccaneers offensive line, because the Buccaneers literally do not have anyone solid on that offensive line except for maybe their left tackle, Donovan Smith, I believe. But other than that, not a great line. So, like I said, we'll talk about that later, but that's going to be something to look out for.
Yeah, definitely will. I'm a little higher on their offensive line than you are. I do really like Ryan Jensen, somebody that I thought really broke out for the Ravens. And then, of course, coming right into a contract season, the Buccaneers paid him. I also like Ali Marpet. from Hobart, somebody that really stood out in that draft class, and he's looked really good. Now, aside from that, they have Alex Kappa, who I'm just really not a huge fan of overall, from Humboldt State. And then they have DeMar Dotson and Donovan Smith, like you mentioned. I think they're solid tackles. I think Dotson's a little bit better, but I don't think this is an offensive line that is going to stifle a Rams pass rush. I think when you look at, the talent that they faced already, obviously the Saints have one of the best offensive lines in football. And there's some big names on the, the Panthers offensive line. They did already go up against somebody like Matt Paradis. So, I do think that this is an offensive line that's kind of like in between what they've already faced. And I don't think they would stifle, our defensive line at all. Kind of moving to, the secondary, because, the Rams offense kind of has its way, or the receivers have its way, with pretty much every secondary they faced this year. They've gotten open. We can talk all we want about how the Rams offense has kind of struggled to this point, but we'd kind of blame that more on the offensive line and Jared Goff not being quite the quarterback that we've seen in the past. Is this a game where you see Jared Goff really take off and show you that he can be that guy? Because the first three games, I mean, you and I have both been really critical of Goff, and I think it's been warranted. I know some people had an issue with the way that we came off as, but I think at the end of the day, you have to hold somebody accountable that is your franchise quarterback that you just committed all that money to, and that has the best receiver group in the league and the best running back at his disposal. But this is week 4. We've already seen Goff struggle the last 3 weeks. Is this the week where Goff finally breaks out against a decent secondary, but a secondary that Daniel Jones kind of picked apart?
I hope so. I think he can. I think that if he was going to do it, this would be the team to probably do it against. I mean, like you said, it's week 4. Obviously got off to a really rough start, to start the season offensively. I have faith that Jared's going to play well this game. I think that, I mentioned their defense and I mentioned that their secondary isn't bad, but I don't think that their secondary is anything to be, terrified of. I think obviously you should always prepare, going into every game like you're playing the best of the best. But I think that, if I was making predictions or betting money, I would say that Jared Goff is going to have a pretty successful game against the Tampa Bay secondary. So we'll see. I certainly, like you mentioned, I know people weren't exactly, some people weren't really thrilled kind of, with the tone last episode, but, you said it perfectly. You have to hold people accountable, especially these players, especially a quarterback that we just paid all this money to. So if he's not playing well, it needs to kind of be discussed. But I'm not worried. I think that he'll have a good game for sure.
Yeah, of course. And just kind of diving into the injury report before we get more into this game, because I do want to touch on that real quick. Chris Godwin, who I think is turning into one of the best receivers in football, he is questionable. I think he is definitely going to end up playing. It sure seems that way. He did have, limited practice on Friday. He didn't participate on Thursday. So you see the improvement there, as well as Ryan Jensen, who I previously mentioned. He is also questionable for this game. Devin White, the first round pick this season for the Buccaneers, is out. That's a pretty big loss there. You can imagine somebody like Kevin Minter or somebody like Deon Buchanan, to take over that spot. I think, they're both capable. And of course, the Rams have seen Deon Buchanan from his days in Arizona, as well as Kevin Minter. So, I think those guys could take over that spot. Jamel Dean, their third round pick out of Auburn, he is actually going to be out as well. And then DeMar Dotson, who I previously mentioned, is questionable. Now for the Rams, you're looking at the cleanest, from what I can remember, the cleanest injury report that the Rams have had. Everybody that was on it this week in some facet, Austin Blay, Tyler Higbee, Aqib Talib, Michael Brockers, Andrew Whitworth, and Todd Gurley are all not listed on the final day. So that means this is the healthiest the Rams have been really all year. They are going to be getting Tyler Higbee back. They're going to be getting Austin Blythe back. So you're going to get a legitimate offensive line. And, it's funny how, we're looking at Jared Goff performing well in this game and really for nothing more than just it makes sense. This is the timing. The first 3 games were kind of a fluke. But, if his play instantly takes off, it's not hard to wonder if the reason behind that was the offensive line getting back to normal and having Austin Blythe there and having their true blocking tight end, their all-around tight end, and Tyler Higbee, who has improved as a pass catcher, but most importantly, he's improved as a blocker since his days at Western Kentucky, and that was his biggest knock. So I definitely think that's something to be aware of. I think I'm really interested to see at some point if the Rams are going to give their 3rd round pick that they traded up for in the draft, Darrell Henderson out of Memphis, a shot. The Rams have kind of gone interesting with the running back group. I know people use the idea that, Todd Gurley's being limited because of injury. I don't really subscribe to that idea. I really don't think it's because of injury, because if it was, then he would absolutely be, on that, injury report. But for me, I look at it as though, maybe it's just a game plan, right? Maybe you find something you like, watching the film and you're like, well, we really want to attack them. We really want to hit them over the head with the passing attack. And, I think for that reason, it's, hindered somebody like Malcolm Brown, who's really played well, in his opportunities, but didn't really see much of the field against the Cleveland Browns on Sunday Night Football. It's hindered Todd Gurley overall. And it has allowed those two to get opportunities where Darrell Henderson has not. So, I definitely think it's something to, monitor as we move forward. And we've seen it before. I mean, different regimes, but we've seen it. Aaron Donald, he took until week 4 of his rookie season to finally get the nod as a starter. We saw Todd Gurley took a bit. Of course, he was coming off a torn ACL. So, I wouldn't be surprised if Henderson's time is coming around the corner, but I also wouldn't be surprised if the Rams just decided to, sit Henderson, wait till he is ready, and then move forward with him. But he was getting a lot of snaps, worth mentioning. He was getting a lot of snaps in August, with the first team. And I know Todd, the injury and everything, but I mean, he was getting a lot of snaps, and that shows, that they were really, not leaning on him, but I felt like they really felt good about what they had in him. I also think, and I say this to this day, I don't think they realized how good Malcolm Brown was going to be moving forward. He has been night and day from the time he came in the building in 2015 as a UDFA out of Texas.
Yeah, I actually think that Henderson is going to be a bigger role in this game than he has been in previous weeks. I mean, I think people were a little bit surprised that he wasn't used more in the first 3 games of the season. But, I think that it's been probably just the right amount of time. He's getting in there. He's kind of learning the ropes. He's kind of is in a good spot where he can, kind of watch from the bench what Gurley and Brown are doing. But I do think that he is going to be much more active in this game against the Bucs. And, I think just, to touch on him, going down the rest of the year, I think that he's only going to play more and more of a role as the season goes on. So that is going to be something to look out for as well. But something I want to ask you, Jake, is this wide receiver situation, because we're going into week 4, and something that kind of all Rams fans and specifically us have been talking about is Cooper Kupp. I mean, Cooper Kupp has been playing phenomenal. He's been playing amazing, but also we have noticed that it seems to be kind of Jared's go-to guy by default. He's kind of always looking for Cooper. Where is he at? How can I get him the ball? Do you think that maybe this game, a different receiver, maybe Cooks or Woods or somebody else, has more of a breakout game?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I mean, eventually you got to watch the film and be like, all right, this guy is constantly leaning on number 18, and we might have to double him if he shows that he doesn't, want to, look off Cooper Kupp. You know what I mean? Because, I mean, obviously, let's be real here. Goff has shown in the past he can facilitate as well as anybody. But, just looking at, Cooper Kupp and looking at Robert Woods and Brandon Cooks and Tyler Higbee and just all the weapons he has, it's kind of surprising that you would just solely rely on one receiver. And I don't want to say he did that against the Browns, but, I think there were times where he really locked on to Cooper Kupp and really locked on to Brandon Cooks, as you do know, because one of the interceptions down the sideline was because he locked on to Brandon Cooks. I just think he needs to do a better job of, quite simply, looking off his receivers, not staring anything down, not tipping his hand. And he's done that in the past. So I think maybe the leaning on Cooper Kupp is the fact he hasn't had him there. And, maybe he feels a little uncomfortable to start the season. It's a new season and everything. And, that those stats that came out the last 8 games, he's had like similar stat line to Eli Manning, and how people have been, obviously, trashing him. And I mean, it was the whole off season we were defending Jared Goff, for whatever reason. So I think, it could be a mix of all that. I think it's hard to, hate on somebody who is relying on somebody that is clearly making plays. But let's not forget, Robert Woods is a top 10 receiver in the NFL. I think he's number 10 in my opinion. I think Brandon Cooks is right outside that, and I think Cooper Kupp's right outside that. So my point is, you have 3 guys in, say, the top 15 in the league at that position. Get them more involved. Be more of a facilitator. Goff has been that way going back to Cal. His days with Kenny Lawler and Chase Hansen. I mean, Steven Anderson. There were so many guys that they had there that weren't total playmakers. They weren't breakout guys. Bryce Treggs, Goff got them all involved. They all had an equal opportunity with the offense. And that is something that he's been really good about with the Rams, but you just don't want to see him obviously fall into that net where he's constantly relying on 18. If 18 isn't open, he's either throwing into triple coverage or, he's just missing other guys open. I mean, we saw it against the Saints. These receivers are way more open than you guys would imagine just watching the film, So I think I definitely think that Goff needs to get back to that, because that's the thing that makes him so valuable. That's what makes any quarterback really valuable, when you can go through your progressions in a quick manner and, keep everything, poetry in motion and just, find the guys that are open. I mean, there's no need to really rely solely on one guy when Robert Woods can come down with the contested catch. Brandon Cooks can, Cooper Kupp can, and so can, Gerald Everett winning, the game-winning touchdown against the Chiefs. All these guys have shown you in the past they can make plays.
Yeah, for sure. We definitely have one of the more talented wide receiver core in the NFL. So definitely if we can, utilize each and every receiver, I think that'd be great. But, I have trust in their game plan and what they're going to do. And, like I said, I'm just happy that, Cooper Kupp is back and he's doing so well. It's certainly been, so much fun for all of us Rams fans to watch him doing that. So yeah, I think that's something to look out for. This game, because like I mentioned earlier, I do think that we'll probably have more success with the pass than we will to run this game. That's just kind of my thoughts, because I think that their defensive front and their linebacking core is far more talented than their secondary, but that's just me. So yeah, we kind of got into that. Is there anything else that you want to add on to? I really hope Aaron Donald just feasts this game. That's just me, but
Yeah. I think it's really imperative that the Rams secondary continues to play the way they're playing. They held Odell Beckham Jr. and Jarvis Landry in check all game long. But Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are one of the best young duos in the game. I don't think people are realizing the type of receiver Chris Godwin is turning into. I think, obviously everyone knows Cooper Kupp and all that. Cooper Kupp came in the same draft as Chris Godwin, as Juju Smith-Schuster, and he's kind of been the guy that no one talks about. Behind the scenes, though, he is making an impact. He had his worst game last week, as Mike Evans was pretty much the target the entire game. And, it's kind of funny. Last week, Mike Evans not really getting targets the whole year. People were already trading him in fantasy football leagues and all that. And it's funny how important it is as a star to, get the football, right? And I feel like you've seen it where teams will be like, well, we're not getting our best guy the opportunities, and we're winning ball games, but we're not getting him the opportunities, so we need to do that to keep him happy. And I think they really did that for Mike Evans. And then, of course, you saw on Thursday Night Football, the Packers really getting Devontae Adams involved. I mean, he went off. So I think, try and kind of, not necessarily the same thing in, LA, but somebody like Robert Woods that really hasn't gotten involved as much as Brandon Cooks or Cooper Kupp. I could expect a huge game out of him. I could expect them trying to get Higbee, more involved in this one because he's been out. And he had that injury, but Gerald Everett, the thing that I guess I worry about the most in this offense has nothing to do with Todd Gurley. It has nothing to do with Darrell Henderson. Henderson's a rookie. He'll figure it out and they'll give him opportunities. It has nothing to do with Josh Reynolds because at the end of the day, if Josh Reynolds at any point doesn't pan out, they'll just go to the next guy. They'll just go to Nasimba Webster. Like it's not even a huge deal, or Mike Thomas. But I will say this. If Gerald Everett doesn't pan out, if he doesn't end up being the guy they thought, that's a second-round pick that was a waste in a draft that George Kittle was drafted in a draft that, George Kittle was drafted in the 5th round. Like, that's an issue. That's the big thing here. You paid Higbee. Is paying Higbee more so about Higbee or more so about, well, we don't have anything if Gerald doesn't, produce? Because I think that's kind of the thing that's not being talked about. So far, it's early in the season, but Gerald Everett really hasn't impressed me. He hasn't really gotten into the flow of the game. And, I get he hasn't really had a ton of opportunities, but he's not really getting open, and he hasn't gotten better as a blocker, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I actually agree with that. I think he's been kind of underwhelming this season, but it's only week 4. So, I wouldn't be shocked if he, takes off from week 4 and balls out the rest of the season. But prediction wise, I'm curious to hear what your predictions are because I have some of my own.
Yeah. As far as like impact players on both sides, I think like the matchup that you really need to watch out for is Andrew Whitworth versus Shaquille Barrett. I don't know if you were on the Shaquille Barrett needs to sign with the Rams train, but I kind of started that whole thing. And the fact that they didn't sign him when he had that familiarity with Wade Phillips, I was shocked. He has 8 sacks to this point. In case if you guys were wondering, you always see those incentive bonuses. He was going to get some big incentive if he got to 8 sacks on the season. He got it in week 3. So no matter what you say, this guy is turning into one of the best. He's the best right now in the game, according to the first 3 weeks. So it's a huge test for Whitworth. I think, and I hate to say it, but I think Shaquille Barrett is going to get in, on 2 sacks on Jared Goff. I think he might be your impact player in this game. But on the Rams side, I really see Jared Goff turning it around, but I don't want to be annoying and pick, the quarterback to be the player of the game because I feel like everybody does that. So I'm just going to say that I think Robert Woods is going to be a huge impact player in this one. I think Woods has shown you the potential. If he was alone and he was the number 1 receiver, in Buffalo right now, when he used to play there, as long as they got him the ball, he's somebody that could have 200 receiving yards. He's extremely agile. He could be used out of the backfield. The Rams have gotten him more, involved actually as a runner, it seems like, than as a receiver. So that'll be something interesting, but I definitely think he could be in for a huge game. And on the defensive side of the ball, I think that Aaron Donald is going to break out big this weekend.
Final score prediction?
Yeah, this is
be bold.
This is a little tough for me. I'm gonna, if you guys heard me on Locked On Rams with Brad Motter, I started off by commending Tampa Bay, and they're coming off a tough loss, and to miss a 30-yard field goal, that's brutal. But I have the Rams blowing them out. I respect Tampa Bay. I respect Arians. I love what they have on offense. Except for Jameis Winston, I think that's an actual problem there. And they don't really have much of a running game, which the Rams have already really held Alvin Kamara in check to this point, and Nick Chubb. So I'm going to say they stifle the run game early on. They force Jameis Winston to make plays. And Jameis Winston doesn't do that because he has to throw against guys like Aqib Talib and Marcus Peters and Nickel Ruby-Coleman, who are all balling out. And, I think in this one, I think the Rams just piling on. I have 38-10 at the Coliseum. The Rams find their offense and the rest of the league gets scared.
So my final score prediction is 35-17 because that's just what I think it's going to be. I didn't really add up any numbers or anything. But I think you're right. I think, I'll start with the defense. I think Aaron Donald is really going to take off this game. I think that people he went the first 2 games of the season, with no sacks. He gets one in the 3rd game. But I think that he's going to have a 2-sack game at least against the Bucs and that offensive line. I think offensively, I agree with you. I think Robert Woods is going to have an incredible game. I think that, he's kind of been setting himself up to have one. I think that he, is a far better receiver than people give him credit for. And I think that he's really going to show out this game and show people what he can do. And I don't think my random kind of prediction is I don't think that either team is going to have much success with the run this game. I just don't see it happening.
Well, I don't think it's a random prediction. I think that you're giving them credit for stopping the run, and they have Vita Vea, who has just been an absolute monster to this point.
Right. Yeah, so I don't see really anything happening at all for the run game for either team. But, I think the Rams are going to excel in the passing game this game. I think there's going to be far more to watch from, the offense of the Rams than the Bucs offense. I don't think that the Bucs offense is going to do much, but I'm still giving them 17 points because I'm being conservative, I guess. I think that they'll maybe randomly do something. But like I said, Aaron Donald, watch out for it, because I just have a feeling that this is going to be the game that he just is an absolute monster.
Yeah, and fun fact, he's on pace to have more sacks than last year because he actually got his sacks week 4. That was his first game with a sack, and then he got it week 3 this year. So he notoriously starts off, quote-unquote, slow, but you have to keep in mind he's also getting double-teamed, and he was also in the Super Bowl. So all these teams, all these fans, all these coaches, if they hadn't had a chance to really go up against him or see him, they saw him in the Super Bowl, and people can say he was a non-factor all they want, but he wasn't. He was taking on double teams and triple teams, and and then you saw the way the season started with that. So, I think that you probably, you're onto something there. I know it's not very hard since Aaron Donald is a generational talent, but I think you're definitely onto something. So it'll be fun. Overall, I think the Rams, this is a huge game for them because they go right into a Thursday night football affair against Seattle. They have to go right up to Washington and face Seattle. They have to go to Washington and face Seattle. And to me, on a short week, that's going to be brutal. I think if you don't see Darrell Henderson this week, being on a short week, you could see a lot more of him next game. So it'll be interesting for sure. Rams are 3-0. They're trying to push to 4-0 and take sole possession of first place, with some help, obviously. The 49ers, I believe they play. I don't even remember who they play. I don't even remember.
This week?
Yeah. I just totally blanked.
They play the Browns on Monday night.
Oh, well, how about that? So if...
Oh, no, wait. No, they don't. I think that's the week after. They don't play this week.
Oh, that's right. They're on a bye. So, yeah, the Rams can technically take over sole possession of first place. But, they're fighting for 4-0. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are fighting to not be 1-3. So, I have a blowout. Alexis has a blowout. But at the end of the day, they got to play the games, right? So, definitely enjoy the game. We will. And then we'll be back for another podcast. Also, if you want to get, the afterthoughts of the game right after the game, Alexis, every single week after a Rams football game, she will be on Instagram Live. So that's where you can catch her. And I will be on Facebook Live. So tune in for that. All right. Thanks so much, guys, for tuning in. For Jake Ellenbogen, she's Alexis Kraft. We're signing off. Enjoy your Sunday.